CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 4, Part 26, Audio by Renee Matthew. Cities like Shanghai became the centers of modern growth by 1919, with an industrial class who appeared there, and that numbered to 500,000. Only a small percentage were employed in modern industries such as the shipbuilding, but others remained unemployed. Most of the people were petty urbanites, xiao-jimin, traders and shopkeepers. That is how they earned their livelihood. Traders and shopkeepers. Urban workers, especially women, earned very low wages. So this was the condition of the people, especially with the traders and merchants who were part of the Shanghai city. The working hours were very long and conditions of work was really bad. Long working hours with bad conditions of work. And as individualism increased, they gave a lot of importance to being independent and individual, to have that individualism and identity in one person. There was a growing concern with women's rights. People gave a lot of importance to the rights of women. That is on ways to build a proper family and discussions about love and romance. So that is how the women were trained in spite of the individualism, which increased. There was a lot of cultural and social impact felt in every nook and corner of the society. It was also helped by the spread of schools and universities, especially the Peking University, which was established in 1902. So a lot of social and cultural change was felt, especially by the spread of schools and universities. Journalism also sprung up, which flourished, reflecting the growing attraction of this new thinking. So journalism was actually picking its pace, and it flourished because of the growing attraction of this new kind of thinking. It flourished so much. The Popular Life Weekly, there was a kind of magazine which was there in those times. It was edited by Zhao Tuofen. He was a representative of this new trend of journalism, which introduced readers to new innovative ideas, as well as to leaders from other parts of the world, like Mahatma Gandhi, Kemal Atatürk, the modernist leader of Turkey. So all the leaders were introduced to new ideas, as well as to leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi and Kemal Atatürk. So the circulation was really widespread, which increased from 2000 in 1926 to a massive 200,000 copies in 1933. So people really loved reading these kind of magazines because it was the first one, and it was totally different, which gave importance to journalism. The Kuomintang, despite its attempts to unite the country, so one of the basic principles of Kuomintang was to unite the country, but that failed because of its narrow social base and limited political vision. The foresightedness of this particular group was very limited, and it had a very narrow social base. A major plank in Sun Yat-sen's program. The major program, the three principal program of Sun Yat-sen, was to regulate capital and equalize land. It was never carried out. It did not have its own importance, having equal land and regulating capital, because the party ignored the peasantry. They did not want to give any importance to peasantry, because when you equalize land, that is where the impact had to be felt, because when you take the land from the peasantry and equally divide it, that is when there is equality in the country. So that was completely ignored to the peasantry, and there was, of course, as a result of this, rising social inequalities. So much of inequality was actually felt, and it really sought to impose military order. Because of all these changes, they wanted to impose military order rather than address the problems faced by the people. They just wanted to militarize the country instead of addressing the problems, the real problems faced by the citizens or the people of China. A very important part in this text is the rise of the Communist Party of China. When Japanese invaded China in 1937, the Kuomintang retreated. They were no longer powerful because of the invasion of the Japanese. The war was really long and very tiring and exhausting, which weakened China. But still they were able to struggle through it. prices rose 30% per month between 1945 to 1949, and it shattered the lives of ordinary people because they were not able to purchase anything. It just rose, and the country was not able to sustain the needs of these people because the war was really long and exhausting. The government was helpless. It was during that time that the rural China faced two main crises. The rural China. One is ecological, with soil exhaustion, deforestation and floods. At the time of the war itself, they were prone to these natural calamities like floods, soil exhaustion and all that. And of course, deforestation is a part of man's action. The second problem was a socio-economic one, which was caused by the exploitative land tenure system. It was very exploitative, indebtedness, primitive technology and poor communication. So had they listened to the innovative ideas which was propagated by Sun Yat-sen, they wouldn't have faced all these problems because he was foreseeing these problems. So look at the ecological problem and the socio-economic problems which the country faced, and that utterly shattered the country completely during the long toiling war with Japanese. The Chinese Communist Party was founded in 1921 after the Russian Revolution. Russia started exercising a powerful influence around the world, especially because of its very powerful leaders and thinkers such as Lenin and Trotsky, who went on to establish the Comintern or the Third International in March 1918. They were the first ones to establish this. And when you go through the history of Russia, they also had a similar problem. Like, they also faced a very big problem during the course of the development of their government, where a lot of problems, internal problems were there. They also suffered at the hands of the foreigners, which helped them to bring about a world government. And that will eventually end exploitation. So everywhere you can see this word exploitation, which is the basis of all these problems, crude problems. So they were the ones who set up this Third International Comintern, which helped them to establish a world government. They influenced other parts of the world also. That is the meaning of this point. The Comintern and the Soviet Union supported communist parties. These two bodies which emerged in Russia started supporting many communist parties all around the world also, and they worked with the traditional Marxist understanding, Marxist ideals, that revolution would be brought about by the working class in cities. Revolution will not work until the working class in cities is strengthened and they come together and fight. There will be, of course, repression and suppression and the shutting up of appraisals, but still the working class, that is why I told you that they have to be strengthened further to fight, because just by fighting once nothing will happen. So they had to move forward, and it should be brought about by the working classes in the cities. So that is how they wanted to bring about a major change. Then there was an initial appeal across the national borders which was really immense. And this particular appeal across the national borders became a tool for the Soviet interests and was dissolved in 1943 because many people they expressed their interest to promote this communist idea, and everybody understood that it's not going to be for the good. And because of that, it became a tool for Soviet interest, means a tool or interest which promoted the Russian ideals, and it was dissolved in 1943 because of all these problems. Mao Zedong emerged as a major Chinese Communist Party leader. He took a different path by basing his revolutionary program on the peasantry. Now he focused on the peasantry because without giving attention to the peasantry, we cannot bring about any change in any society. The inequality was actually felt within the peasantry. Poor people only felt that inequality, not the richer classes. So this revolutionary program had to be instilled among the peasantry, and the success made the CCCP a powerful political force because none of the other groups which emerged before the CCCP was able to establish a very strong program as them. So because of that, it was really powerful, it was successful also, which ultimately won against the Kuomintang. So no longer Kuomintang group was going to overpower the Chinese. Now it is a CCCP, and that is how the Chinese Communist Party led and came at the top. Mao Zedong's radical approach, his approaches were very radical. It can be seen in Jiangxi in the mountains. That is where he camped from 1928 to 1934 to be secure and safe from the Kuomintang attacks, because by this time they understood that a new political party was going to be formed. And Kuomintang, you should understand that they started weakening their control over the country. So now they went and hid amongst these places in the mountains, and Mao Zedong's radical approach can be seen in Jiangxi in the mountains. There was a strong Peasants' Council Soviet which was organized, and that united through confiscation and redistribution of land. A peasants' control was organized, maybe by the peasants themselves, and it led to the confiscation and redistribution of the land. It actually focused on the needs of the peasants, the need of redistributing the land equally. Many leaders were there. China saw the emergence and life of many leaders. In fact, it witnessed the life of many leaders. But Mao was very different from the other leaders. He stressed the need for an independent government and army. He wanted an independent government and army. He became aware of women's problems. He was not like other leaders and supported the emergence of Rural Women's Association. The rural women, they were not even heard. The voice was not even felt. So he gave importance to the Rural Women Association first. He started promulgating a new marriage law which forbade arranged marriages. If you're not interested in an arranged marriage, you don't have to go for that. That was a new rule. It stopped purchase or even selling of marriage contracts and simplified divorce. So simplified divorce, all these were part of business where you sell marriage contracts and then ultimately the individuals suffer, whether it is man or women. There was no peace of mind. And we have learned in sociology or even in social science in a very early class that family is the basis of a society. Without peaceful families, we will not be able to fill a very good society. And when societies are not peaceful, it will not lead to the building up of a very strong and bonded nation. Okay, so this is where they wanted to actually bring about a rectification, a correction. And of course, they were successful in that. In a survey in 1930 in Xunwu, Mao Zedong looked at everyday commodities. He started going into the details of many minute problems which the other leaders did not do, such as salt and even soya beans. At the relative strengths of local organizations, he arranged local organizations, asked them to look into the availability and the trading of all these things. At petty traders and craftsmen, ironsmiths and prostitutes, he looked at the conditions of these people, their daily activities. It's not that he's putting a stop to all these things, but unregulated flow of trade was not at all allowed. And he strengthened the religious organization for the betterment. And he examined everything and analyzed different levels of exploitation. Exploitation was the common problem in all these places. He understood that, especially with traders, craftsmen, ironsmiths, prostitutes. Everything was so much. It had gone beyond a limit. And that is why they felt the need for a reform. He gathered statistics. Till then, you should understand that nobody had any records. So that is when he asked his local organizations to gather statistics of the number of peasants who had sold their children and found out what price they received. Boys were sold for 100 to 200 yuan, but there were no instances of the sale of girls. So he understood that children were forced to be sold for trade. All these things he was against. But first, before putting a stop, he will have to take the statistics of everything, and he understood that boys were sold for this much amount, but no instances of the sale of girls, because the need for hard labor, not sexual exploitation. They actually sent girls for hard labor. It was on the basis of these studies that he advocated ways of solving social problems. So first he said that we have to give importance to the social problems faced by the society. Everybody was not speaking about it. He understood that everything was exploited. See, now people will speak about all these things even if the government doesn't look into it. But what happened is, he was the first leader to make the people understand that you are exploited. This is not something which is happening for the progress of the country, and you should put a stop to it and promote it in the right way. So these studies, these documentation, these statistics helped the government or the Chinese Communist parties to regulate the flow of trade, to understand the basic ground level problems. That is something which is very important, and take further action.